Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kika and today I am going to show you how to knit the love letter top, which is the one that I'm currently wearing. This is a top that has lots of lace stitches, so we're basically gonna cover all of the basics of knitting lace. The love letter top is one of my most proud moments, I think, as a knitwear designer. I really wanted to make a project that has lots of different lace stitches and textures, and I've even added in 2 stitches that have this love heart shape. And the love letter name came just from the idea that this is really my love letter to lace stitches. Now, this might look a bit overwhelming and like, oh my god, there's so much going on. But trust me, in this video, we're gonna break it down. And actually, knitting lace, there's only a few kind of basic stitches that you need to know. Mostly it's doing yarn overs. So when you do a yarn over, you essentially create a hole in your fabric. And to compensate for that hole that you create, because that makes a new stitch, then you usually also have some decreases on those rounds. So I'm gonna show you all of the different motifs in this pattern, so you can then make your own love letter top, or if you're just kind of curious to see how actually lace stitches work and how you do it or the logic behind it, you're very welcome to watch this video. And I think this is going to probably be much easier, and after watching this you're gonna be like, huh, that's it, because I think it's the same with knitting cables. Once you kind of get the hang of it and realize that it's just stitches that are moving, and you often use like a double pointed needle or a cable needle to do it, it really isn't that difficult at all. So I hope that after watching this video, you will just feel like there's a whole new world opening up to you. And this one, if you want to, have a project to kind of really practice on, this is a top, so it's quite quick to knit. And I also have added in this love letter top, it has these I-cord edges here around the armholes and the neckline, so also I'm going to show you that. And without further ado, let's just jump straight into the tutorial. Before we get into the actual tutorial, let's talk about yarn. So the love letter top is worked in a DK weight yarn. I'm going to be using this yarn, which is called Line by Sannes Garn, and it has approximately 110 meters per 50 grams. So that's approximately, I think, 119 yards. And that is also the yarn that I used to knit my first sample. Now, DK weight yarns are very easy to find. Here are just some example. This is by Shapies, not sure if I'm saying that correct, Katona. It has approximately 125 meters per 50 grams, so that will work wonderfully. Here is another color in Sannes Garn Line. We have Novita Cotton Feel. That one I think also is approximately 120 meters per 50 grams, will work really nicely. This one, Katia Tencel Cotton, very soft and nice. This one also has approximately 120 meters per 50 grams. Or one of my absolute favorites, Knitting for Olive, their silk or their cotton merino works well as well, but then I would hold 2 strands double, just because this I think has approximately 250 meters per 50 grams. So by holding it double, you will get almost an equal amount or equal thickness that these other yarns will produce. So that's a little bit about yarn choice. The one that, or the sample I've knitted in, as I mentioned before, it's in this linen yarn. Let's see exactly what it has. So it is 55% cotton, 35% viscose, and 14% linen. So it's a very drapey yarn. A cotton yarn, silk yarn, linen, all of these will work really wonderfully. Of course, you're also welcome to use a merino yarn, but that will probably affect the drape a little bit. Next, what we need to talk about before beginning is gauge. So gauge means how many stitches you have per 10 centimeter, or that is usually what is used. So how many stitches you get per 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And this is very important to check before you start a knitting pattern, because if that differs very much, so that's depending on how tight or how loosely you knit, your measurements for your finished garment will vary a lot from the actual pattern. So that's why this is quite important to check. Now, for the love letter top, we have all these different stitches going on. So to make it a bit easier in the pattern, I have actually made the gauge for this, the seed stitch here, which is essentially just a purl and a knit and a purl and a knit. And then on the next row, it's a knit and a purl and a knit and a purl. And that way, or I chose that one because I think it's a little bit easier to measure than some of these lace stitches. I also included actually this lace stitch gauge, but yeah, as I mentioned before, this one can be a little bit trickier to measure correctly. So that's why you can use, or you can make your gauge swatch in seed stitch. So for this one, it's 20 stitches. So I would recommend casting on, for example, 26 or 28 stitches just on a little gauge swatch and knit across until you get approximately either like 5 centimeters, so that's 2 inches, or a 10 centimeter, so that's a 4-inch swatch. And then you can see, so if you knit that, and as I said, this one needs to be 20 stitches. If you have, say, 22 stitches, that means you are knitting looser. So then, instead of choosing the 3mm needle, which is recommended in the pattern, you would choose a smaller size needle. So this is the 3mm needle that is recommended for the pattern, but as I said, if you knit looser, you have to choose a smaller needle. So for example, a 2.5mm needle. So you can see that this one is a little bit smaller. Then on the other hand, if you get, for example, 18 stitches instead of 20 stitches, that means that you are knitting tighter than me. So then you might want to, for example, choose a 3.5mm needle. So hope that makes sense, and it's definitely worth taking a little bit of time to make that gauge swatch before you begin. Okay, so we are ready to begin. So first we are going to be casting on stitches here for the upper back. Then we're gonna work that back and forth. Here we're gonna do some increases for the armholes, and then we're gonna end with this stitch here. After that, we leave those stitches on hold and pick up stitches for these fronts here. So these are worked separately, then they are joined together, worked back and forth. We do similar increases here for the armholes. Oh, that is Viggo. Come say hello. And then we join everything in the round to work the body in the round all the way to the end, where we have really this fireworks of different stitches. So I'm gonna go through all of these, and as you can see, there are lots of really lovely textures and laces, so you're gonna be a master of knitting lace after you've completed this project. And for the upper back, we have 3 different sections of lace, and I'm going to go through all of them, but then of course some of these stitches are going to be repeated, so you'll quickly see that lace is actually all about doing yarn overs and doing decreases, either usually an SSK or a knit 2 together, or then we have these central decreases where you slip one, you knit 2 together, and then yeah, we'll go through all of the details just in a second, but it's going to be very intuitive after a while, I hope. All right, step number 1 is casting on stitches. So I am grabbing my yarn, and I'm just gonna use a standard backwards loops cast on method, and I'm going to knit this in size small. So check the pattern to see how many stitches you need. For size small, I'm going to be casting on 55 stitches, and I try to make them not too tight because we're gonna be picking up stitches later from this edge, so I don't want it to be too tight. All right, I've cast on 55 stitches, and first before we begin the actual pattern, we have 2 setup rows that we're going to be working. So the first one is on the right side, and on this first setup row, we're going to be placing these removable stitch markers. So it's good to have those handy, either removable stitch markers. You could also just use some scrap yarn, just something to mark where we are going to then be picking up stitches a bit later on for the front. So as I said, I am working size small, so I'm going to be knitting 13. This might vary a little bit depending on which size you are working, but I start to work my stitches. And one recommendation I have when you are knitting lace is to choose needles that have a pretty pointy edge. So that is going to make it easier to work. You don't want to use knitted needles for these that are very soft or blunt, because that is going to be very hard in the long run when working lace. All right, I've worked 13 stitches. That means that I can place my removable stitch marker. So I'm going to be placing it actually around the strand here between my stitches. So not in an actual stitch, but around this strand here. So I have this removable stitch marker, can just place it there and close it. And then that's going to make it much easier for me to see where I need to pick up stitches when we work the fronts later on. All right, so you've placed your first marker there, then I knitted here. So this is going to be basically the middle of the back, and then placed another stitch marker here. So that is the first setup row now done. And then you're just going to be turning the work, because we're going to work this back and forth. So turn the work and then work 1 row of just purl all the stitches, and then we are ready to begin the first lace motif. So first, the second setup row is just purl all across these stitches. The first lace chart we're going to work is called chart A1. And first I want to explain something about the logic behind working lace. So it all essentially is based on working yarn overs in most cases. So these are these little balls here. And then when you do a yarn over, you essentially create a new stitch. So if you would just do yarn overs, you would always have a lot of increases. Now, to compensate for that, then you usually work some kind of decrease. So in this first stitch, which is called A1 in this one, we always have 2 yarn overs for this stitch pattern. And then we do a decrease here, and this decreases 2 stitches. So every time we increase by doing these 2 yarn overs, we also do decreases so that the stitch amount stays the same. And there's lots of variations on this, but this is essentially the logic behind all lace. So I just wanted to kind of first say that. Don't worry if it doesn't make sense to you. It will definitely start making sense when we get going. Now, this chart is worked across all stitches, and you can see that there is this box here. That means that these stitches in the box you will be repeating. So first we have stitch number, let me zoom in a little bit here. We have stitches 1, 2, 3. They aren't in the box, so those we are going to be knitting. Then the stitches inside the box, those are going to be repeated essentially until there's only 2 stitches left, and only then the last stitches are going to be worked, so the last 2 stitches. And this same logic applies for all of these different charts, and I've also explained here, so if you need a little bit reminder, you can always turn to that. That's so nice, the sun came out. That means that we can start working chart A. So definitely I recommend having the pattern here by the side when you watch this, but I'm gonna essentially show you how to do the yarn overs and the decreases first for chart A1. So as we just talked about, the first 3 stitches, I'm just going to be knitting because that is what the chart says. So I'm reading the chart from bottom up, from right to left. So I've knitted 3, and now starts this section inside the box. So first we have a yarn over. This might be a little bit distracting. Let me take it away. So the first stitch inside the box is doing a yarn over, and a yarn over is just done by taking your yarn and literally wrapping it over. A yarn over. So it's there behind, and then I just bring it to the front and over my right needle, and that is it. Then I continue. So I've done one yarn over, and that yarn over is going to be a stitch on the next row. So for me, that's going to be a wrong side row. So I'm going to purl that stitch. And then we have, after the yarn over, it says to knit 3 stitches. So that is what I'm going to be doing. So the yarn over I did count, and then I have 1, 2, 3. And next up we have something called slip 1, knit 2 together, pull, slip stitch over, knit 2 together. So it's this little triangle. So we're going to do exactly that. So first I slip 1, and I do that knitwise. So I go in through here, and knitwise essentially just means that you go in this way, and purlwise would mean that you would go in through this way, but no, here we go, knitwise, so you slip it knitwise. Then I knit these next 2 stitches together, and here's where you really need this pointy needle. Knit them to wrap the yarn, so as if it was 1 stitch, but I knit 2 together. And then we have the slip stitch that we first slipped. Then I'm going to pull that, and you might have to hold on to that knit 2 together a little bit so it doesn't escape. So I'm going to pull, and now I go in purlwise, so pull that slip stitch over my knit 2 together, like that. And then you see you get this little kind of triangle. And this means that we've now decreased 2 stitches. So we've compensated for 1 yarn over. And now next we're gonna knit 3 more. And again, we do a yarn over, just bringing the yarn over my needle, and I knit 1. And that is essentially the stitch pattern complete. So these are the stitches that are inside that little box, and these are now going to be repeated until you only have 2 stitches left. So again, it begins with a yarn over, then I knit 3 stitches, and you can totally disregard this little marker that is here. Then I do again slip 1, I knit 2 together, I pull that slip stitch, and I hold my finger over that knit 2 together, like that. So I've done now decreased 2 stitches there, and I knit 3, and then I have to do a yarn over, and I knit 1, and that's again 1 more stitch pattern box complete. And then I just repeat until I have 2 more stitches, and then just knit those 2. So now I've arrived, I only have 2 stitches left, so then I go ahead and knit those. And this is now row number 1 of chart A complete. And next, for the next row, just gonna turn around and then gonna purl all of these stitches. I've purled row 2, so now I'm back on the right side. And the way this stitch pattern works is you're gonna notice that that little triangle is always going to be exactly at the same spot. So we have these yarn overs always move 1 stitch more inwards. So for this one, instead of starting with the yarn over once I get to my box, I actually knit that one. And those yarn overs I've just purled on the previous row, so I've created new stitches. And then I have here now instead, I do my yarn over, and then I knit 2 instead of 3 now, so that I then get my little triangle. It's going to be exactly in the same spot. And I tell you this because sometimes maybe you miss a yarn over, something happens, and you're not sure what's going on, then it's always easy to see, or you can kind of fix it with creative different methods, solutions, to make sure that you have this aligned. And sometimes what happens is that you will forget, for example, to do a yarn over on one row. So let's say if I forgot to do a yarn over on the previous row, it's very easy. Then you can just locate this strand that is between the stitches. So this strand here and this one, if you just pull it up like this and lift it on your needle, then you can kind of fake yarn over. So then I could just knit this one and it would look like a yarn over, even though I forgot to do a yarn over on the previous round. So that's like a little bonus pro tip if that would happen. There are ways to fix it. Lace in that way is good because usually, like if there's small mistakes, you can't really tell because there's so much going on. So if it's or if it's a couple of rows down, maybe you would want to then rip it up. But if it's many rows down, or it's something that is not so visible, oh, I think I did a mistake now, then you can definitely always use these kind of more creative solutions to work it out instead. After having completed chart A1, this is what it will look like. So I've actually gone ahead and knitted this earlier, so I had this prepared already. Here I have my stitch markers in a different color, and you can see here now that these yarn overs that we make together then with these decreases create a really nice, almost sort of a wavy pattern. And together that then becomes the lace, and that's really the foundation of all lace stitches. And here we have this little border. It's only purl stitches and working yarn overs, and that same decrease for this little border here. So you have everything you need now to work that first chart, chart A1. Next, we're gonna start shaping the armholes. So we're gonna be working increases here, both at the right and at the left edge, 2 stitches from the edge. And then we're gonna start working chart A2. And first, so this is step number 2 in the pattern, if you're following the pattern. And first we have 2 setup rows. And in these setup rows, we're first doing knitting 2 stitches. And then for some of the sizes, you already do an increase. And I'm gonna show you how to do the increases. They are called M1L, which stands for make one left, and M1R, which stands for make one right. So I'll show you that in just a second. But on this setup row, all you need to do is you knit according to the pattern, and then you place markers. And you can place one of these removable stitch markers, or then you can just place a regular one like this. I have even like a smaller one here. And this is going to mark where then the pattern begins. So I've placed those here according to the pattern, and then I've purled, so I've done 2 setup rows. Next, let's start working chart A2. The armholes are shaped by doing increases, so I'm going to show you first how to do an M1L, which means make one left. The increases are always done 2 stitches from the edge, so I've knitted those 2, and now I'm going to do an M1L. I use my left hand needle to pick up the strand that is between these stitches here, and it's a little bit twisted here, but it's right over there. So I'm gonna go in through that strand now with my left needle, and I go in through the front here, so from the front of the work, and then I just wrap that strand onto my left needle, and then I knit it twisted. So I knit it through the back, because otherwise I would have a hole forming, and I don't want that. I just want a new stitch. And then I continue. So this is now row number 1. After the setup rows, I continue to my marker. One special thing about chart A2 is that, as you can see here, we are going to be working decreases on both the right side and the wrong side. So I want to show you these decreases. So there's going to be a knit 2 together, or a purl 2 together, or there's going to be an SSK or an SSP, so that's a slip purl. And I'm going to show you those next, because you already know how to do the yarn overs, and then you have some purl stitches here, and then in the end you also have one of those slippy things. So here now I start, and first I have 1 knit stitch, and that is outside of the box. So if you have the pattern in front of you, I'm knitting the stitch that is outside of the box in that chart. And next I start, so this is now the stitches that are in the box. So first I knit 3, and then we have a decrease that is going to be leaning to the right. So this is going to be knit 2 together. It's abbreviated K2 tog. And simply what you do is, as you would knit normally 1 stitch, you just knit 2. So you knit 2 stitches together. So there you have it, knit two together. You can see it leans to the right. Then we have a yarn over, so just bring my yarn over, and then I do a purl, so then I have to bring my yarn front here, and then I do a purl stitch. Then I have a yarn over again, and next we have an SSK, so that is a slip slip knit. So this will produce a left leaning decrease. So this time, if to knit, I just slip this first one, I slip the second one as if to knit, so going through here like that, and then I can transfer these both sort of half. Well, I can transfer them both to my left needle, but I'll show you a quicker way to do it soon. But you can transfer them to the left needle, and then you go ahead and knit these two together, but through the back loops instead this time. And there you have it. You can see that now this decrease is leaning to the left. And then I continue, so then I have 4 more stitches inside that blue box. And then it starts all over again. So then I just repeat these stitches all the way until the end, or all the way until I get to this marker that I placed on my setup row. Now I have 7 stitches from that SSK I just did. That means I need to do a knit two together again. Then I do a yarn over, I purl 1 stitch, do a yarn over again, and then I do again a slip slip knit. So I'm going to show you how you can also do it. You can just slip that first stitch, slip the second stitch, and then you can immediately just with your left needle put that in there, and then you just wrap the yarn around your right needle, bring that through, voila, it is done. And then again I need to knit 4 stitches, so that's still of this pattern repetition, and then I begin again, so then there's 3 knit stitches, and then I just repeat this until my marker. So I've now repeated all of my stitches, and if all is well, you should have exactly the amount of stitches, so you can now just slip that marker. And next, so when we come here to the right side, and check your size of course in the pattern when you have to do these increases, but next I'm going to make 1 right, so that's M1R. And again, very similarly to the make 1 left, I'm going to locate that strand between these stitches here, and I'm going to go in through with my left hand needle through the back this time, wrap that stitch around, and this time I'm going to knit it through the front again, so that strand gets twisted and I get 1 new stitch. So I've now made 1 right, and then I just knit these last 2 stitches, and that is row number 1 of chart A2 with the increases complete. Row number 2, so we are now gonna turn the work, and now it is where things get exciting. So we are gonna work decreases also here on the wrong side. And now that first row, I've read the chart from bottom up, so I've started from right to left, so that bottom row, and now I'm gonna go from left to right, since we are working back and forth. So again, first I need to just purl until the marker. I can slip my marker, and then I start from row 2, so now I'm reading it from left to right. So first I need to purl 3 stitches, and here now you can see that the symbol says that now we have to slip slip purl. So how we do that is I'm going to first slip this first stitch as if to knit, but I don't knit it, and the second one as well, slip that is to knit, but I don't knit it, and then I transfer both of them back to my left needle, and then I bring my working yarn here in front, and then I'm going to be purling them through the back loop. So I'm going to take my needle here all the way behind here and go in through them through the back loops like so. Then I wrap my yarn around and take it through. And I've done a slip slip purl Let's see how that looks on the right side. So it should be leaning to the left so that it continues that same line. All right, and then we do a yarn over. So exactly like you would on the right side, you just bring the yarn over and up. And then we have this yarn over we created on the last row that I'm just gonna purl. So treat it as a normal stitch. So we get that hole there. Then we have a knit stitch here in the middle, purl the yarn over. And now we're gonna do a yarn over, and then we're gonna purl two together. So this is a knit two together on the right side. So I need to bring my yarn front, and then very simply, as if I would purl just one, but I actually purl two, and I purl them together. And we can again check, and you can do this if you're feeling unsure. On the right side, yes, it looks like it is leaning in the direction we want. And then you continue on, and of course it's a little bit trickier maybe to see on the wrong side what is going on. So here you really have to check and count. One way, when you've worked this for a while, you can start to see that always when you have two stitches, so there's a yarn over and there's two stitches, that is when you need to do these decreases. Of course, it will depend a little bit on where in the pattern you are. So I definitely recommend having the chart close by and just making sure that you're kind of focused on this, in this chart particular. Otherwise, I mean, you can always, of course, rip back the work, but I think it's a good idea for especially this chart and this spot here, just to take a little bit extra care. I've now worked the first 4 rows of chart A2, so you can see this really nice line starting to form. And from the sizes from extra small until 3 extra large, you are going to be working those increases on every 4th row. So that's always row number 1. And then you do 3 rows, you always do chart A2. And then you always, again, on the, well, actually on the 5th row, you would do an increase. And don't worry, it says in the pattern very, very clearly how you have to do that. But just remember to do those increases, because it's kind of easy to get lost in just like doing the chart and be very excited about it. And in sizes 4XL to 5XL, you actually don't do any increase on that first setup rows, but then you will do on every 2nd or every 3rd row. So always on row 1 and row 3 and 5 and so forth, an increase. So that's just a little note, but otherwise you are good to go. You know now everything you need for chart A2, all of the symbols. So I will see you back here soon for when we start chart A3. Here we have chart A2 worked. So I worked all of the rows while I've done the increases, as you can see here, for the armhole shaping. And next we are moving on to chart A3. I thought I'd just show you before we begin working on chart A3. So chart A3 is essentially this part here. So we're gonna be working these twisted stitches here. We're gonna do some decreases here and some yarn overs, and then we have these small really cute bubbles that I want to show you. And then after completing chart A3, we're gonna leave the stitches on hold and then work the fronts, and all of this then is worked in the round, but that is what is coming up. Let's start with row number 1 of chart A3. And on this first row, again, we're going to be placing some stitch markers to mark where our pattern begins. So again, the chart follows that same logic that we've had until here. So, or actually there is already the stitch marker here. So we're gonna move that stitch marker. So I'm gonna take that away and place new markers instead. No matter what size you're working, it begins with, again, knitting 2 stitches, and now we are going to make 1 left, but this time purlwise. So that is abbreviated M1L and a small p. So what I'm gonna do is, again, just bring my needle, left needle here, take it from the front, but this time instead of knitting it, I'm gonna purl it. So I'm gonna bring my working yarn front, and then I'm gonna purl it from the back loop here, so that I twist my stitch, wrap my yarn around, and I have made 1 purlwise. And next I'm gonna purl a couple more stitches. Now this might depend a little bit on what size you're working, how many you're gonna purl. I'm gonna purl 3 for size small. And next I'm gonna place a marker. So I'm gonna place a new marker, and then I'm gonna remove those old markers that I had, but of course you're free to just use that one, especially if it's a removable one. You can just open it and place it here instead. So now I'm ready to begin row 1 of chart A3. So on the first row, we have this little border. First stitch is a knit stitch, and then I just continue all the way around. I do yarn over and knit 2 together. Yarn over and knit 2 together, and now I have that marker there, so I'm gonna just pop that away so that I can continue. Now I've knitted across my row 1 until the last 5 stitches, and there I'm gonna PM, so place a marker, a new marker, and I remove that old one, and then continue. So I purl 3, again check your size for exactly how many stitches you need to do this with. And now I'm gonna make one right purlwise. So this time I go again in here, look at that strand going from the back. And then I just bring my working yarn front, and I can go ahead and purl this strand. So I make one right, but purlwise. And then I knit my last 2 stitches. All right, that is row number 1 of chart A3 done. So now we're just gonna turn the work around because we're still working back and forth. So let's work row number 2 of chart A3. So first we're just gonna be knitting these first 2, purling these first 2 stitches that are knit stitches on the right side. So we need to purl those. 1 and 2. And then I'm gonna be knitting all the stitches until my marker, and this is why it's very good to have that marker there. So I knit all of these. Up. And then I can slip my marker. And now I know this is where I need to again begin taking a look at chart A2, row number 2. And this time I'm going to read it from left to right. So row number 2 starts with a twisted stitch. And it's a twisted knit stitch on the right side. So that means that on the wrong side, we're gonna have to purl this stitch twisted. So I bring my working yarn in front, and instead of working it from the front loop like you would normally, I'm instead gonna bring my right needle from the back loop. So instead I go all the way, take it all the way around the back here and go in through the back loop here. So bring my needle from the back loop there through, then I wrap my yarn around and take it back in. So I've purled it now from the back loop, which will create a twisted stitch on the right side. And then I have a yarn over next. So that is going to be a purl stitch on the right side, which means I can just go ahead and knit it. Then I have this stitch that we knitted 2 together on the right side. So I need to, again, purl that twisted, bring my working yarn front, go through the back loop, purl it twisted, like that. And then I just continue all the way across, all the way until I reach, again, that other marker. And the last stitch I'm going to work is a twisted purl stitch. So all of these regular stitches you're gonna twist purlwise, so purl through the back loop, and then all of the yarn overs you are going to just be knitting. So it's pretty easy to kind of see what you have to do for each of these. All right, I have knitted rows 1 and 2 now of chart A3 and worked these increases on that first row, and now we are ready to work row 3, and we're going to do increases again on row 3 for all of the sizes. So let's start. So again, I mean, you already know this, we're gonna knit 2 here, always in the beginning. All right, this one is twisted, and then I'm gonna again make one left purlwise. So bring my yarn or needle here front, and then I purl this through the back loop. Oh, it's very tight. And then I purl again until my marker. And now on the right side, I at least find it's a little bit easier to see what's going on. So I slip my marker. So now all of these stitches, these knit stitches, we're gonna just knit through the back loop. So that means that we're gonna twist them. So instead of working them like this, as you would normally, you instead knit them through the back loop. So I am going to go in here through that back leg of my stitch, wrap my yarn around and bring it through. So the stitches become kind of twisted, so this a little bit more defined. And then just purl and repeat this way all the way across until my marker. Then I again purl to my last 2 stitches, do make one right purl and knit those last 2. And then I actually will just repeat what we did on row 2 for row 4. We are ready to begin row 5. I worked rows 1 to 4 of this section of step number 3, I believe we are on, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, step number 3. So next, the same logic applies, but I just thought I would show you a little bit what happens here. So again, on the right side now here for row 5, we are gonna do again an increase. So start knitting 2, then I do my purl increase. Here I come to my marker, I slip that, so I know that now I need to again go to my chart. I have my chart here at the moment just on my phone like this, so I know where I am. And now it's row 5 of chart A3 that I need to follow. So first I'm gonna, as we've done, just follow it. So I need to knit one through the back loop, purl 1, and then it changes a little bit, but you already know all of these symbols. So we have a knit 2 together, then I do a yarn over, then I knit this now just the regular way, and then I do a yarn over, I do an SSK, then I have a purl, and then I have a twisted stitch. And now you can see, if you have your pattern in front of you, we have this box that appears here. So these stitches I'm now going to be repeating until 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the last 8 stitches before my marker. So the stitches inside this box, I already showed you all of them. You all already know all of these stitches that are coming up, because there are these decreases and they're always done on the right side. And then next I'm going to complete this, and then I'm going to show you how to do this little thing, which is going to be a cute little bubble. And one thing I want to say before leaving you is that remember to check the pattern for how many increases you have. So it will always say, and it depends a little bit on which size you're working. So to remember to do those increases here, they're always done on the right side, purl-wise for this section. So just a little note to remember. Next up, I'm going to show you how to create these really cute and defined bubbles that are used in the love letter top. There are many different ways you can knit bubbles, but I'm going to show the specific technique I've used in the love letter top. So this is now row 17 of chart A3. So I've already worked my first 2 bubbles, and next I'm going to show you how to do them. So step number 1 is we're going to create 5 stitches in the next stitch. And we do that by creating knit stitches and then some yarn overs. So first step is we just knit like you would normally into the stitch, but you don't drop it from the left needle yet. Instead, we do yarn over on the right needle. So I'll bring my working yarn between my needles and up and over my right needle and then hold it tight. Then I do again a knit stitch, or I knit into the stitch one more time. So now you can see I have 3 loops or 3 stitches in this one stitch that I've created. Then I again repeat, I do a yarn over, so I bring my working yarn between the needles and up and over the right needle. So now I have 4 loops here, and then I do one more knit stitch. So here now I have 5 loops in this same stitch. Now I can go ahead and drop it off the left needle. And then we have step number 2. So now I'm going to do one more yarn over. So I bring my working yarn over and back on my right needle. And then I'm going to be using my left needle, and I'm going to pull all of these stitches over that yarn over. So I begin by just taking the first stitch and I pull it up and over that yarn over that I created. And I do it with the same with the second stitch here. And I pull it, oh, the third stitch already wants to come, or loop. So the second loop also up and over that yarn over. Then I repeat with the third. With my left needle, I pull it up and over that yarn over. And with the fourth, bring that up and over my yarn over. And one more we have to go. So I'm bringing my stitch up and over that yarn over. The last step is we want to secure this bubble to make sure that it's like extra defined. So to do so, I'm gonna use my right needle, and you can see here right beneath the bubble, there is this strand here. So it's right beneath the bubble, and I'm gonna use my right needle and bring it from the back of the work, so from the wrong side, I'm working here, and then I poke it up exactly underneath this bubble here, and I bring that strand, so I poke it up over here, and then I take it over that strand so that I get that strand onto my right needle. And then I use my left needle and I just do that same that we just did. I pull this second stitch, so my bubble stitch, over that strand we just picked up. And you can see it's really nice and defined now. And I'll just make a few of these purl stitches so you can really see how nice defined it is, and it also really keeps it in place, because sometimes these bubbles, they want to kind of escape to the wrong side, I find. So that just helps it keep it in place. Okie dokie, I have now worked chart A3 all of the 18 rows, so that means that the upper back is now complete. So now we can go ahead and pop all of these stitches onto, for example, a stitch wire. I'm using these stitch wires that is like a little tube, so I can just go ahead and attach that tube onto my needle like this, and then just transfer all of my stitches onto the stitch wire while I'll work the front next. You can also, of course, use just like scrap yarn, or even if you have many needles, you could even have it on the needle, even though I feel like that is a little bit inconvenient. So definitely recommend having either a stitch wire or then some scrap yarn. I will also usually tie little knots here just to make sure that my stitches don't escape while I have them here on hold. Then we can go ahead and cut our working yarn, leave a tail of approximately 20 centimeters, 8 inches or so that we can then weave in that end later on. And next we are gonna work the fronts. Next, we're gonna work the front. So we're gonna work them back and forth. First the left front, back and forth, then the right front, back and forth, and then we're gonna join them to form the neckline. So starting with just having your 3mm or whatever size needle you've been working with, grab that and grab that new yarn, again leaving a bit of a tail, and we're gonna start with the left front. So that it means that when you have the cast on edge up and you have the right side facing towards you. So this is the left side. And I'm gonna start here where we have this marker that we placed. And I'm gonna be now joining my new yarn and picking up stitches from here. And check now, so this is now gonna be chart B1 that we're gonna start working. But first we're gonna just pick up and knit stitches here, so I can go ahead and remove my marker and make sure I remember where I need to begin. So I'm gonna start here from where I had my marker, and you can either pick up stitches into the stitch themselves or between. And I usually like to pick up stitches between. So I'm gonna go in here with my needle, and then I take my new yarn and I just wrap that around, keep it really tight, and bring it through. So I've picked up and knitted 1 stitch, and I need to pick up and knit 13 stitches all the way through. So then I continue, and I'm again gonna go here in between. That's my second one. And here, so here is the stitch. So you could either go in here through the actual stitch, but I'm gonna actually go through between them. I just find that that usually looks a little bit better, at least for me. This is totally a matter of personal preference. And again, just bring my yarn over here between again. 4, 5, 6, and last one here, a little bit hard to see. So now I have X amount of stitches. I'm working size small, so I have 13 stitches. This will depend a little bit on the size that you're working. And before we begin working chart B1, we're going to work one setup row. So I'm going to turn the work around and just purl all of these stitches. So this is setup row number 1, purling all of these stitches. Okay, setup row number 1 complete. Can turn my work around again. And next we're going to start working according to chart B1 in your chosen size. When starting to work chart B1, don't be fooled or don't be confused by these gray stitches. They are not counted as stitches, so you'll begin here from the white boxes. It's just the software I use, Stitch Fiddle, to create my charts, and that will always then have these gray boxes when there aren't any stitches. We're going to be increasing here, so that's why it's kind of a little bit funny, but it starts from where the actual box starts. So just wanted to say that before you get into it, or if you're feeling confused. So then you're just gonna work chart B1 in your chosen size, and you already know all the symbols, so it should be easy breezy. I've now worked my left front according to chart B1, so I've done some increases here. You'll see those in the chart. And now I need to put these also to rest while we work the right front. So you can again use a stitch wire. If you have an extra needle, I have this little thing here. So I'm just going to transfer all of them onto this because there aren't that many stitches. So then I can just have them on hold on this. You can go ahead and cut the yarn. And next, we're gonna work the right front. To work the right upper front, again, we're gonna pick up stitches, and this time we're gonna start here from the right corner or right outer edge. And I'm gonna bring my needle here between these first stitches. And I have new yarn here that I am attaching to my work. And then I'm gonna be picking up stitches until the stitch marker here. I can go ahead and remove my marker when I get to it. I need to pick up one more stitch, do it in here. And then we're just going to be repeating. So there's going to be one setup row of purl stitches and then just working chart B2. Next, we're going to join the left and the right front. So I have worked all of the right front stitches now according to chart B2. So next we're gonna first just continue on this right side that we worked. So step 1 is first just knit all of these stitches. So I've worked all of my right front stitches, and now we need to cast on new stitches here for the middle of the neckline. So I'm gonna use just the backwards loop cast on method. So my working yarn here, and I grab that, and just using my thumb, I go over and up and down, and I'm gonna be casting on for size small. I need to cast on 23 new stitches. 2, 3, 4, 22, and 23. And now I'm gonna work these left front stitches, but I need to first transfer them back onto my needle. Just gonna transfer them back onto a needle so that you can work them. All right, and then again, just using the same yarn here, gonna knit all of these left front stitches as well. Make sure that this doesn't get twisted. So there you have it. The first row is now complete. So now you can see I have 55 stitches here. So it's the same amount I had here for the upper back. So next you're just gonna continue. You're gonna do exactly the same as we did here for the upper back. So we're gonna work chart A2 and chart A3 and also shape the armholes doing these increases. it will all say in the pattern, but essentially you already know how to do all of this. So I'm gonna continue to that, and then I'll meet you back for when we are gonna start to work the body in the round. Next, it's time to start to work the body. So I have now completed the whole upper front as well. So this is where I've left off. So now we're gonna join everything on the same needle that we've been working on and start to work in the round. So first, we are going to have a joining round. And step number one is to continue. So with the stitches that you've had now been working for the front, we're just gonna knit across those. Now I have knitted across all of my upper front stitches, and here when I come to the end, I'm gonna be casting on 3 new stitches. These are gonna be under the arms, so I'm gonna use again the backwards loop cast on method to create 3 new stitches. 3, like that, and then I'm gonna be placing a marker here, and this is gonna be called the side body marker. So I'm gonna place one in a different color than my beginning of round marker. So I placed that there, and now I'm gonna knit across all of the upper back stitches, but before I do that, I need to transfer them onto my working needle so I can knit them. All right, I've now transferred all of my upper back stitches onto my needle, cast on 3 stitches. I've placed my side body marker here. And then I just continue, so I grab these and I knit across. And if you still have, I have my markers still left here, you can just go ahead and remove those markers. I am now knitting the last stitches of my upper back stitches. And then again, I am going to be casting on 3 new stitches here with the backwards loop cast on method, 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm gonna place one more marker. So this is now the beginning of round marker. And I'm using a different type of marker here. So here I had this pink one, and here I'm gonna just use this one, so then I know which one is which. And that is it, that is the joining round complete. So now we are gonna start working round number 1. And for round number 1, you're gonna start working according to chart C, which is worked in the round. Now, one note about chart C is that you find a lot of these gray boxes in the beginning here, so disregard those as stitches. So only knit according to the stitches that have a white background. So that means if you have the chart in front of you, stitches number 6, 7, 9, 10, 14, 15, 17, and 18 on these first 6 rows are not actual stitches. So just as a little heads up when you start to work chart C. So I'm gonna now start working according to chart C from, again, bottom up from row number 1, and I'm starting from the right to the left, and just gonna work according to the first 4 stitches, and then I'm gonna start repeating again the stitches that are in the box, and this time disregard those gray stitches. I've now worked across all my stitches of the upper front until my last 6 stitches before my side body marker. So these are the stitches number 21 to 26 in chart C. So the ones that after the pattern repeat. So for these ones, it's then a little bit different. So then I'm just gonna follow again what my pattern says. And these new stitches that we've cast on, I'm just gonna be knitting here all of these. When I come to my side body marker, I just slip that and then I continue. So I start again, work the first stitches of chart C and then just repeat. In chart D, these heart shapes are worked, and I wanted to show you one of the special symbols which comes here after you've done this little seed stitch, these rows. So I'm going to show you the special symbol where you increase from 1 stitch to 5 stitches. I am now on row 7, so I've just started to work row 7 of chart D, so that is my beginning of round marker. I'm working here the stitches under the arm, and I'm going to show you now this stitch that is called increase 1 to 5 stitches. So in the next stitch, I'm essentially going to be increasing from 1 to 5 stitches, and I do that by knitting 1, I do a yarn over, I knit 1, Again, I do a yarn over by bringing my working yarn behind or between my needles and over and behind my right needle, and I knit one. And then I can let that go. So I've increased from 1 to 5, very much like we did when we worked the bubbles, but this time that's all I'm gonna do, and then I'm just gonna continue. So as the pattern says, then I'm gonna purl 3, and then I'm gonna repeat that again. And these are gonna be forming these little heart shapes then as I continue on with chart D. So once more, I can go into the same stitch, knit 1, do yarn over, knit 1, do a yarn over, and knit 1, and then I can drop it off. So again, very much the same as the bubbles. I have now worked quite a bit of chart C, and I wanted to show you this symbol that stands for purl through back loop, because we create these yarn overs here in this pattern, but instead of having them appear as holes, you are going to actually purl them through the back loop. So that means that they become twisted. So actually it won't form a hole at all. So let me just show you quickly how to do that. So when I come to this, so now I've completed this first little heart shape. So I'm just gonna purl it, but instead of purling it here from the front loop, I am instead locating that back leg, bringing my right needle through there and purling it through that back leg instead, so that I do not get a hole, but instead that yarn over is instead works as an increase, and in this case we don't want to have those holes appear. So just wanted to show you that. The final finishing step is creating the I-cord bind off edges around the neck edge and also the armholes. And you can see I've already done the I-cord edge here for the armholes. So this is what it's going to look like. It produces a really nice finish around the armholes, and it will also, if you feel the armhole is a little big, this will make it a little bit tighter. Then when you block it, of course, you can again stretch it out a little bit, but that's just a little note. And I'm gonna show you how to do this around the neck edge, but it's the same technique for all of it. I'm gonna be using a 2.5mm needle, that's a 1.5 US needle. So use like a half size smaller than you've done for the actual top. That's what I recommend. So I'm gonna start to pick up stitches here from, this is one of the shoulder seams, and then I'm gonna start first with the back. So I recommend starting at one of the shoulder seams. And then I grab my new yarn, and then I find a good spot where I can poke in my needle, wrap my yarn around, and take that through. And then I'm gonna be picking up one stitch in every stitch here. So I'm gonna again go between the stitches like we did when we picked up stitches for the fronts. An I-cord bind off edge is usually pretty tight, and that is why you wanna go in probably through every stitch. Now, if you're a very loose knitter, you might want to skip a few every like 5 stitches or 5 rows or so. It's really, you kind of have to assess as you go. For the armholes, I know, a few less. Now I've picked up stitches here from the back, and next I'm moving on to the side here. And here, similarly, I'm gonna pick up one stitch for each row. So here I will try to pick up stitches from the same line of stitches to create a really nice edge. And again, I pick up one stitch for every row because the bind off edge does tend to become quite tight. Now I've picked up stitches all the way around, so I can start to work the I-cord bind off edge. First step is I'm going to create 3 new stitches and do that with a knitted cast on method. So for here I have my first stitch, and I'm going to just knit that as I would normally do, but I knit it and then I bring it onto my left needle. So now I've knitted, so that's the first stitch, and then I've knitted one stitch into that first stitch that I've then transferred onto my left needle. Then I knit this stitch that I just made, can knit that, and I again transfer this onto this left needle. So now I've cast on 2 new stitches, and then one more time I knit into this stitch that I just created, knit into it and transfer it onto my left needle. So now I have cast on 3 new stitches with a knitted cast on method. All right, I'm ready to start. So I'm going to be knitting 1, 2, and 3. And then this is the first stitch that we've picked up. I'm going to be knitting that together with this second stitch here. Through the back loops. So I knitted those through the back loops, 2 together. And I can just slide it off my left needle. So now I've knitted 4 stitches, and now I'm just going to transfer them back from my right to my left needle. So one by one, I just transfer them back onto my left needle, and I repeat. So again, I knit 1, knit 2, knit 3, and then I again knit these 2 together through the back loops. So my 4th stitch I'm going to knit together with one of the stitches that I picked up around the edge. Like that, and then again transfer all of these stitches back from my right to my left needle. And this first one is always a good idea to do a little tight, just to make sure that it's extra snug there. And then again, I can knit 2, and the 4th, I knit 2 together through the back loops with one of the stitches that I've cast on, or picked up, sorry. And then this is what I'm going to be repeating all the way through until I have my final 4 stitches. I've worked my I-cord edge all the way around now until I only have 4 stitches left on my needle. So I've worked those, and then I have 4 stitches left. That means that I am now ready, and I've cut my yarn and just threaded onto a tapestry needle, and now I'm going to be sewing the end together here with the beginning. So I will show you that. And next step is always a little bit daunting, but I'm just going to pull this gently away. So I have these 4 stitches now here. And then I'm just going to take my tapestry needle and I'm going to go through that first stitch here. Bring my yarn through. Then I'm going to go here to the beginning here and find that first corresponding stitch, and I go under here. Bring my yarn through, and then again I go in exactly the same spot here, go through this, so the same way I went in, bring my needle again through here and pull tight. Like that, and you can see that it becomes quite invisible. Then I have my next stitch, gonna grab that, pull my yarn through, and then I go here to the next stitch here. Okay. And again, go in through the same way I went in the first time. So I'm repeating this for all of my 4 stitches so that it creates this seamless border here. And once I'm done, can have a final check. Looks pretty okay. And then I can just go ahead and weave in this end. And usually for these I-cord edges, I like to weave in the end. It's pretty good. You can kind of hide it here in this kind of canal that you've created from the I-cord. Then you're just gonna repeat the I-cord edge for both of the armholes, pick up 1 stitch for every stitch or row in this case. And now you can see this looks a little small, but the next step is to block the love letter top. I'm just now soaking my love letter top in, this is quite cold, lukewarm, coldish water, and squeezing out any air bubbles to make sure that all the fibers get properly soaked. And here you can see a comparison of the unblocked version versus the blocked version. So you'll see that all these lace stitches, they really bloom out and relax. And what I like to do, because now it is pretty wide, so I'm gonna be stretching it this way a little bit because I want a bit more length, so you can really shape it while it is wet, and then it will adapt to its new shape while you then just dry it flat. Blocked and ready, my second love letter top. This just literally was sitting in the sun for a couple of hours and it already dried up, so I am able to show you my finished love letter top. This one I definitely recommend that you wet block, just because all of these laces, they just bloom out so much, and mine was quite wide before I did this, so then I stretched it out. I also stretched out here around the armholes and the neck edge a little bit. And if you want to add a little bit more length, because we all have different preferences, different proportions, in the pattern I also give this suggestion, but I would suggest that you then do a few more of these little fan laces here. So then you just repeat that chart C, those rows, for a couple of more times. So then you still kind of keep the whole symmetry of everything intact, but just get a little bit more length. One thing that I realized that we kind of skipped over was the whole hem and bind off situation of the body. I actually filmed how I did the bind off section for this, but then somehow accidentally deleted those video files. But basically I just did a twisted rib stitch, so just knit one through the back loop, purl one, for approximately, I think I did like 6 or 7 rounds, so just about like 2 centimeters, that's just a little bit less than an inch. And then I did a standard bind off. So just a standard bind off, so I knitted one through the back loops, purl one, and then I always just pulled that first stitch over my second stitch, or yeah, the first stitch over the second stitch, and repeat all the way through. And I did it pretty loosely because I don't want it to be very snug here at the end. I just want it to drape really nicely and let the lace do the talking. So in case you were wondering, I had totally filmed that part, wanted to include it here, but sometimes that happens and I was too quick and deleted those files by accident. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. If you're still with me, congratulations. This became a pretty long and hefty tutorial because I really wanted to make sure that I go through everything very thoroughly, because I know how frustrating it is when you are knitting something or watching a tutorial and then there's some like really crucial part that might seem pretty obvious, but they just skip over it and then you're kind of stuck and confused. So that's why I really wanted to include everything in here. And of course, if you then decide to knit this, or if you are knitting this, you can always come back to those. You can use, YouTube has a really good chapter feature where you can see everything divided into chapters. So if there's something that you need a little bit of reminder of, you can come back to this video and watch it over again with the pattern, or with the help of the pattern, and make your own love letter top. I would love to see them, so definitely use the hashtag love letter top if you decide to make this, and tag me. I absolutely love to see your projects. Similarly on Ravelry, it's really fun to see just then the same project in different colors and what people come up with. It's just super inspiring and one of my favorite parts about this whole knitting community. And as always, you can find more of my work and everything I'm kind of working on behind the scenes as well on Kutuvakika on Instagram, so come and say hi over there. And until next time and until the next tutorial, I hope to see you there. Take care and happy knitting. Bye!